That's the real tragedy of today's tweets. They were a diversion. When the president talks about the people who elected him, he wins. When he talks about himself, the left does. The president was not elected to pick fights with TV hosts. He was elected because he promised an agenda the country actually needs, but nobody else but him was offering.
Tucker's take from last night. He argues, don't let it get in the way of getting things done. This is new controversy arises over tweets from the White House and the president just yesterday and throughout the week. Juan Williams, Fox News political analyst, of the co-host of The Five, and Mercedes Schlapp, former media spokeswoman of President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor. And good day to both of you. On we go. Hey, Juan, you should have seen Mercedes last night on Special Report.
Oh, really?
I mean, she was like Russell Crowe in the ring. She was ready to do battle. I think in a bigger sense to both of you, Mercedes, if you look at the president's history, he's always taking others on. Should we be surprised? Or should we be used to it by now?
I don't think we could ever get used to some of his tweets, quite frankly. But I'm not surprised because there has been this messy relationship, especially between these two hosts from Morning Joe and the president. They were buddy-buddy at one point. That moved into what would be personal attacks on both sides, from Mika and Joe making personal insults of the president. And then the president, which we are not surprised, went after them. And I think what's happened is with this White House is that they feel that they're in constant personal attacks, not only on the president, but also on the staff. I mean, even when you look at the SNL skits, which, yes, are very funny, a lot of them are personal attacks on these individuals. And it's very frustrating for this White House that's trying to push an agenda for the American people, where they are focusing on and want to focus on how we deal with the healthcare situation, how we push forward on tax reform, and it's incredibly frustrating. With that being said, these tweets are a distraction, and some of these are inappropriate, and it's a waste of time for the president to even focus on these posts.
Juan, take her bigger picture point there. You used to cover the White House. Comment on the media's reaction to this administration for the past 5 months. I mean, at times it's been pretty brutal, and this is a president that time and again shows that he's up for that challenge of fighting back. Just start there.
Well, I don't think there's any question the press has been fairly antagonistic. I don't think anybody left or right would disagree with that. But you know what? I think they view him oftentimes as a guy who is impetuous, and I think the tweet really is about that. And the contrary point would be that given his difficult relationship with the press that thinks they're holding, power to account because he is the president of the United States, he thinks that he can go around the press when he wants and establish himself as the sole authoritative source of news by calling them fake news and the enemy of the American people. So
clearly a strategy.
I think it is a strategy, and I think in a week in which they had such trouble with the health care bill and other issues, what you see is the president has clearly moved the dial. We're not talking about what was going on with health care, after 7 years of promises. We're talking about this. Mercedes says, that they're pursuing an agenda, but we're not hearing them talk about that agenda so much as we are at this tweet.
Well, you had two immigration bills passed in the House that were both campaign issues, Kate's Law and also sanctuary. So that's not nothing to scoff at. I mean, they tried to do this and they got it done.
Well, I mean, they did that 2 years ago, too,
the Supreme Court. Let me just finish here. And the energy speech that was given yesterday, too, that Scott Pruitt was just addressing with Shannon there. Yeah. Our poll finds this. Does it help or hurt? 71% believe it hurts. And that was taken prior to the storm of yesterday. But I just want to make Mercedes' blood boil a little bit here. No, in a friendly, collegial way. Here was Dr. Krauthammer last night, and then Mercedes can respond yet again.
This is how the worst dictator, Duterte, in the Philippines, would talk about opponents. It's degrading, and it reduces the United States from a grand republic to a banana republic.
Well, you can imagine, Juan, what Mercedes said after that.
Right. And I have to just tell you, I mean, just to make that comparison of a dictator like an Hugo Chavez or the Philippine dictator to President Obama, that is exactly the narrative that so many of these mainstream outlets push. Let's be real.
Hey, Mercedes,
Hugo Chavez,
Mercedes.
time out.
Hang on one
No,
second.
Mercedes, I want to
Hugo
save you.
Chavez basically
you meant
nationalized
President Trump.
industries.
Hang on.
Hugo Chavez nationalized industries, crippled the private sector, took over the media. President Trump is making these comments and being critical of the media, but in no way is taking steps to remove the freedom of the press. And I find that just to be, I think that Dr. Krauthammer went way too far when he starts making these comparisons to a dictator.
Go ahead, Juan.
No, I was just telling Mercedes that she said President Obama when she meant President Trump.
I mean, President Trump.
Yeah, that's all. But in general,
My blood was boiling again.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I don't want to get run over by the gladiator. But I do think that given the fact that the White House press corps feels so under siege, there is some reality to the question of the president's relationship with the press. He may see it as going around them, but at some point, you know, reporters do have a real job, and they have to be held accountable. People can watch, listen, read, but that's the lifeblood of a democracy.
Yeah. 98.6, right? Always. Thank you, Juan. Thank you, Mercedes. We'll see you both.
Happy 4th, guys.